All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Today's topic, quilt and needle art retail, making your marketing count. Just a reminder to everybody, there is a questions field in your side panel here. If you guys have any questions during that webinar, you can definitely feel free to ask those questions and we'll answer those as we can. My name is Michaela Hines. I'm the Client Success Manager with POSIM, and I am here with Leanne Presley, our guest speaker and expert. She's the CEO and founder of Stitchcraft Marketing. This is all of her information here, but she's going to be talking to us today and giving us the inside scoop on the quilt and needle art industry. So we're just going to dive right in here. Leanne, every good marketing campaign follows a strategy. What's the process involved in creating the right marketing strategy?
Yeah, let's jump right in. First, let me just say thanks so much to Michaela and the whole team for allowing me to come on here and be the expert or the person that's had a lot of experience in this area. So I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of that information with you guys. And I do think you're right. A lot of it starts with a strategy. At my agency, Stitchcraft Marketing, we work with a lot of clients, and I would say the first most important thing that I see is people coming in without a plan. And so this is really where we usually start. This is the place where we walk all of our clients through starting with that strategy. So what I would say is there's several components. You want to first make sure that you understand what your target market is and who you're marketing to. I see a lot of clients just jump right out of the gate and they're throwing mud up on the wall. You know, they're doing Facebook ads and they're doing Pinterest and they're writing a blog and they have no idea if A, it's being targeted to the right person, or B, if it's ever working. So I always tell people, let's just rewind that and let's start from a place of really understanding who your customer is, and then you can put together the strategy plan. So I'll kind of walk through some of the components. What we do is actually just pull out an old-fashioned spreadsheet. We'll do Google Drive spreadsheets, or you can use an Excel spreadsheet, and we actually plot out all of the different areas that you're going to be working on your strategy and your plan. So for us, it's typically in the quilt market, a lot of social media. You may also have some print media. You might also have some local advertising and those kinds of things. But for the most part, we'll plot out all of the social media. So on a strategy plan in that Excel spreadsheet, I want to know what channels are going to reach your customer the best. Is that Facebook? Is that Instagram? Is it Pinterest? Is it TikTok? And put that into your outline. We also almost always have a newsletter strategy, so that goes right in there, and it's going to make sure that all your content and what you're planning is in your strategy plan. And then we also do blogs and a lot of other little components. The other big part of it is your budget. A lot of people will just slap things out there and have no idea how much money that they can or want to spend on that budget. So I say, you know, assign a certain amount of money to each of those things too. For example, you might say every quarter I'm going to spend, you know, $350 on Facebook advertising, just so that that's all planned out and it's in your Excel spreadsheet, and you know exactly you know what you're going to do when you get to it. And we typically recommend about a quarterly plan. More than that, you know, life's just so dynamic and your content's probably going to change. So you can do kind of big picture for a year or more, but our plan is usually about 3 months for a strategy plan.
Thank you so much. Those are definitely some really good points. The next question we have for you is going to be, what is branding and how do you set apart your brand from other competitors? You know, there's hundreds of thousands of stores out there now that are the same. What branding helps you with setting your store apart from others?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michaela. Another one that we get a lot. We work only in the craft space at Stitchcraft Marketing, so all of our clients are quilt shops, manufacturers, distributors, and then we also have a lot of clients on the yarn side as well. And so this branding question comes up a lot because, you know, if you're a quilt shop and you're selling the same lines and the same, you know, presser feet and the same thread companies and all of that as the person right down the street, you got to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself, right? And a lot of that, again, starts with understanding who your customer is. If you find that your customer base is sort of the younger, newer quilter, maybe they're modern quilt enthusiasts, that's going to be a lot different branding strategy than a customer that maybe is marketing towards an older clientele, and she is 55 and older and really prefers the traditional quilting designs. Those are going to be different, right? So your branding needs to really reflect who your customer is going to be in that front. So the example I often point to is like Apple and Microsoft. So if you think about it, they both sell computers, right? But their branding is very, very different. If you think about, what would you think about with Microsoft? And I looked this up just before I jumped on here today. Microsoft's whole theme of branding is about fun and being productive and getting the work done, versus Apple that has a totally different feel and brand, and their branding is a lot more about how it makes you feel. It's more about lifestyle, imagination, innovation, passion. So they're both selling quilts, proverbially speaking, but very different ways to present that. So when we talk about how to create that brand for your company, I think about who the customer is. And the next, I usually look at, what are your core values for your company? What are the things that are important to you? What kinds of problems are you solving for your customers? And then also storytelling. How do you tell the story of your quilt shop? Why would people want to come to your Apple quilt shop versus the Microsoft quilt shop down the street? And once you figure all that out, then you've got to make sure that all your branding is consistent. And of course, when we talk about branding, a lot of people think, oh, it's just my logo and it's just my colors. And yeah, for sure, that's an important part of your brand. And you definitely want to make sure that, if you've got a certain kind of logo that you're using on your website, that you've converted that into, a little thumbnail image that you're using on all your social channels, so that when your customer sees your presence all across the internet, really anywhere, whether that's direct mail or print advertising or podcasting or wherever you are, that brand is consistent. So you want to use the same taglines, you want to use the same brand colors. We always recommend something called a style sheet for that. So if, for example, you are you're having a graphic designer at the local newspaper design an ad for you, you can send along your style sheet so they know exactly what fonts to use, or if it's a color piece, what colors they're using in, let's say, a direct mail piece, because you do want to have all that consistency. And I think over time, having really good branding and really consistent messaging helps build that awareness and engagement, which is what we're definitely looking for in promoting our businesses.
Awesome. And it looks like we got a question here. Michelle Johnson said, how do you narrow down who your customer is since the web is so huge and vast? Would you mind touching on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. This is, again, something that comes up all the time, because I think a big mistake that people make is just jumping right in there, and they just start with selling stuff, and especially with a brand new business. And then, 6 months or a year down the road, they're like, I'm not getting the sales that I really want. And the other big mistake is people say, I'm marketing to everybody. And the thing I like to say is, there's riches in the niches. And, that can just mean that you specialize in modern quilting over traditional quilting, or maybe you have mostly modern quilt fabrics and you showcase mostly the modern movement inspiration, but you have a little bit of traditional, right? So how do you do that? Well, I will say that after this presentation, maybe Michaela, we can send out a link to a couple of different pieces and presentations that I've done on just the customer avatar and how do we identify that. But it kind of starts with looking at 4 different quadrants. We call them demographics, characteristics, hopes, and like their fears, essentially, or their aspirations. And there's different ways that you can do that. I recommend doing like sleuthing on social media. You're going to want to sort of fill in those quadrants of who they are. Of course, demographics is going to be your easiest. How old is she? And I'm going to say she because the majority of the customers are female. How old are they? What are their interests? What are their hopes? What are their problems that you can solve? And a lot of times it's all on social media. So you can go in, for example, to their Facebook account and you can do a little bit of sleuthing on who they are. You can look at posts that they've engaged with your brand and what they like or what they commented on. You'd be amazed at how much you can find out about a person just by spending a little bit of time on their Facebook page. And then once you do that with multiple customers, let me just quickly mention, you can also get that from email, from surveys, from talking to customers on the phone. If you're a brick and mortar, every time they come in, have a conversation with them. Ask them, are there other products that you'd like to see us carry? Or if they say, oh yeah, I went to the local, I went to the Houston quilt market. Oh, well, what were the kinds of things that you bought, or what did you like the most? You've got to engage and try to dig up that research. And then what will happen is you'll start to be able to put together an aggregate profile of who that customer is. And once you start marketing just to her directly, I think what you'll start to see is those wheels will start to turn, the ROI will start coming in, and then you'll be like, Eureka, that's my customer. That's how we see the process play out.
Awesome. So we've talked about branding and what makes up a successful brand. How do you get your brand in front of the right audience?
This is a good question. It kind of really ties back into what I was just talking about with knowing who your customer is, right? So I'll give you a real life example. I was talking to a client a few days ago, and she bought a new business. And so she sort of inherited the customer, and she was a really big modern quilt enthusiast, and the business that she bought was a very big audience of traditional quilters, and so she had to really make sure she was continuing to market to her existing audience and getting her brand in front of that right audience, even though she was on Instagram a lot and she wanted to do TikTok and she wanted to create a lot of content that was geared towards a younger millennial audience that was into modern quilting. She needed to make sure that she stayed in her swim lane, right? Which is marketing to that older customer that's the more traditional quilter. So she needed to really focus on keeping her brand in front of that right audience. So there's a couple of ways to make sure that you're doing this. Of course, we're talking about social media most of the time. That means you've got to create engaging content that really speaks to your audience. So, when you're putting together blog posts or content pieces or newsletter articles, make sure that you're speaking exactly to your avatar. So in my business, my avatar, her name is Carol. And so we always make sure whenever we're creating something, we'll ask ourselves, does this resonate with Carol? Is Carol going to understand this article on tech, or is it way over her head? And I think that you need to focus on where the channels are that Carol is. So for example, my Carol, she's not on TikTok. She's not on Twitter. She's mostly on Facebook, and she's a little bit on Instagram, and so on. So you've really got to make sure that you understand your customer and you understand what channels she's on, so that you can continue to put your brand in front of that right audience. So hopefully that explains a little bit more. And there's a lot of other things that we can talk about for brand exposure options. There's making sure you're looking at the whole landscape. It's not just social. This has to do with your classes in your shop, also the different partnerships that you're doing with collaborative partners. That could be like the manufacturers that you're working with. Again, content in your blogs. That's super important to make sure that you are putting up blog content that solves her problems, gives her tips and tricks on the projects that she's working on. That your content in the newsletter also is relevant to her. I'll give you another example from this client that I was referring to yesterday. The other thing that she discovered is, again, she was more of an advanced quilter. So she was putting out blogs about, really advanced stuff, like different kinds of feet that you could use for free motion, and some really advanced skills. Well, the business she bought was really more beginners and advanced beginners. And so we're guiding her to really change that strategy to start with mostly advanced beginner content, make the bulk of her business focused there, on, all of that, the blog content, tutorial videos, tips and tricks content, all of that, advanced beginner. And then she can kind of expand a little bit outside of that. So we're going to start with beginner content because we want to onboard new customers into her sales funnel who will then eventually become advanced beginners and drop right into where she wants them. And then maybe a little bit for some advanced quilters too. But we definitely had to shift that focus because her brand needed to be in front of the right audience. And that starts with understanding who she is and then designing content around that.
Okay, so our next question, let's say you evaluate your efforts several months down the road and you find that the efforts are not aligning with what you originally strategized for the business. How do you ensure that your message is consistent and being delivered across the effective mediums?
This is a really good question. I think the key to this is making sure you keep your finger on the pulse of your data. And I would say 90% of our clientele, they don't do this. Or they'll say, yeah, I've got Google Analytics on the back end of my website, but then they don't open it and they don't know how to interpret it and they don't know which metrics are the most important. So I think in order to prevent you from a strategy of, I'm going to throw all the mud up on the wall, you have to really be looking at your metrics and some of that data coming back in. Because if you don't, what ends up happening is you get locked into a habit of doing all the things because you have no idea which is the thing that is working well or not working well, right? So let's say you have a banner month. Oh my gosh, April was off the charts. We sold more than anything. And you were doing direct mail and print ads and speaking engagements, and you were also doing Facebook ads and shoppable pins on Pinterest and yada, 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 the list goes on. Well, how do you know which one of those things was really the successful piece of that strategy? Well, if you were looking at your back end data and you were looking at, where is the referral traffic coming from in Google Analytics, or if you've got some of these really more advanced platforms set up where you can have pixels and you can see exactly where a sale came from, then you're just, sort of at the mercy of your whole strategy. So what I would say is probably you need to check it every month or at least every quarter. And you need to constantly be refining that original strategy and making sure that you're always moving back towards the center. So, some other things I always advise to clients is, make sure that you're listening to what your customers' needs and wants are and keep those top of the mind, and change your strategy. Be dynamic if those things change. A great example is COVID. I mean, it was super obvious how the needs changed. People wanted mask materials and they wanted little kits and they needed everything put together and they needed to feel safe and they needed, all the things that changed with COVID. So you've got to keep your strategy dynamic. And we talk about targeted advertising also a lot with making sure that your message is consistent along your print, your digital, your email, your pay-per-click, and all your social. Those are all really important components that you need to, be keeping your finger on the pulse of to make sure that you're doing it well and that it's focused and targeted.
And Leanne, you mentioned the Google metrics. Is there a specific metric that you tend to focus on, or are there any ones that you think are the most important to focus on as a business?
Yeah, I can speak to a couple of those. So of course, I think one of the most important metrics that we look at is your referral traffic. So again, if you're out there and you're doing, let's say 4 or 5 or 6 different channels, social channels, and you see that, let's make an example, you've really stepped up your Pinterest game and you're on Pinterest and you're doing custom graphics and you're doing, really, really great keywords, and you start that, in month 1. In month 2 or month 3, you should be able to go to the back end of your Google Analytics and see that Pinterest is now one of the higher ranking referral traffic pieces that's coming in on your data analytics. And that happens to our clients all the time. We love that when they hire us, they're like, Pinterest, we don't even know anything about it. And we say, give it to us. We want to really turn that around. We can typically bring Pinterest up to the number 1, 2, or 3 spot for incoming referral traffic, which is great because more eyeballs on your website means, the more potential to make a sale. So referral traffic is another great one. The other thing that happens with referral traffic is you may have somebody out there that is a brand ambassador, or they love your product, let's say a micro influencer or a micro blogger, and they've been talking about how great your shop is, or maybe a particular, they're loving Tula Pink and they know that you carry it and they put in a link to your shop. And then all of a sudden you've got this spike in your traffic. That would be a great opportunity for you to reach out to that blogger and maybe, continue to nurture that relationship with her. Send her some free stuff or invite her in to do a video tour, or, there's a lot of stuff you can do to nurture those relationships. But you would never know that there was someone out there referring traffic to you if you did not look at your referral traffic statistics. So I would say referrals is probably one of the biggest ones that we take a look at. Bounce rate is another one we get some questions on fairly often. Bounce rate is kind of tricky because a lot of people think, oh my gosh, if I have this huge bounce rate, something's wrong. And there's kind of 2 schools of thought with bounce rate. One is if you've got a really, really high bounce rate, that means there's something wrong with your website. It means people are coming to your website and then they're leaving right away. The example I always point to with this is, we work in the yarn space a lot, and there's 2 words that always come up that confuse people. One is spinning. So if we have keywords that are spinning, some people come to the site and they think we're talking about cycling, exercising, spinning, a spinning class, but it's really a yarn spinning class. And so they're like, oh, no, that's not the kind of spinning I was talking about. And boom, they're out of there. They leave your site. So that would be what a bounce is. And so if you have a lot of that, then you probably need to put yarn spinning classes in your keyword phraseology so that people are coming to your website using the exact correct keywords. So it could be, if you have a really high bounce rate, that you have need to make corrections with your website. Conversely, there is a school of thought that people say if you've got a high bounce rate, especially in the realm of your blogs, it means that you've actually done a great job and satisfied their need. Because if you think about it, if you type in a keyword, let's say how to clean my spinning wheel, it takes you right to that blog content on your website. I read the article and then I say, okay, great, I got what I needed. I'm gonna go clean my wheel now. And they leave. That is considered a bounce because they came to one place and then they left. So I say you just got to dig a little bit deeper, look at what that content is that people are bouncing in and off of. Anything below 30%, that's kind of my benchmark. If your bounce rate is 30% or lower, don't worry about it. You've got better things to work on than your website. If it's in the 70, 80, 90%, then consult with your webmaster or someone like our agency to take a look at your website and see if we can help make improvements there. So Michaela, I would say those are probably the 2 that we start with. And, there's a lot of other statistics in Google Analytics and a lot of video tutorials on how to read analytics. We have a lot of content on our blog, which is stitchcraftmarketing.com/blog. We just did one a couple weeks ago on the most important metrics. So I definitely think it's something you need to take a look at if you're a business owner.
Awesome. Thank you so much for touching more on that. So
Sure.
the final area that we want to talk about, guys, steps a little bit outside the bounds of marketing, but I think it's really important to talk about. Can you touch on your experience when helping Needleart and quilt shop owners produce an omni-channel experience? Like, how do you ensure that the new channels of revenue stay consistent with your original strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, let's just define what omni-channel marketing is, because there's probably people listening that have not heard that phrase before, or they don't really know what it is. And I kind of think about it in 2 ways. So first, let me just define how I think about omni-channel. So, it used to be way back decades ago, if you were to buy a product, you might go into your hardware store or shop or wherever you are, and you see something that you want to buy, and that's really the only place you've ever seen it. Maybe you saw one ad in the newspaper that advertised a sale on XYZ, and then you went into the store and you bought that product, and that was it. It was a very single dimensional experience. Now we live in a world where marketing is what's called omnichannel, multi-channels. So if you are a quilt enthusiast, for example, like I'll just use myself as an example, I might go to the Houston quilt market, and I'm walking around and I see, some beautiful design and some fabric, and I think, oh God, that's so cute. That would be great for the baby quilt for my niece. And I leave it there. And then I go home and I might be browsing around on my Instagram channel and I see, oh my gosh, my best friend, Carrie, also liked that same designer. And so then that's like a second touch point. And then a third touch point might be, I'm listening to a podcast when they're interviewing that designer. And so I hear more about it. And then I go into my local quilt shop and lo and behold, they have it there. So I'm being marketed to on many channels, all sorts of different ways, it's called omni-channel. So when a customer purchases something from you, it's really hard for you to determine where that sale came in, right? Is it because they saw your direct mail piece, or was their last touch point a Pinterest graphic, or was it, what was it? It could have been really anything. And I will just say, side note, footnote, that's part of the reason why it's really difficult to know what is converting in your marketing strategy. I have a lot of clients that are like, I haven't really seen the return on Facebook advertising, so I'm going to pull that whole thing. I'm canceling everything. And then months later, they realize, well, sales have gone down. I didn't realize why. Well, maybe people weren't buying from Facebook. Maybe that wasn't the last conversion point, but it was part of the omni-channel experience. It contributed to their trust of your brand and your product and their engagement with your brand and product, and that's why they bought, right? So it's a little bit of a dilemma, omni-channel marketing. But the other way that omni-channel marketing can work is that you also don't always know the point at which a customer enters the purchasing experience, right? It could be that they're calling you on the phone to place an order. It could be that they're sending you an email. It could be that they're going to your website and making a purchase, right? It could be they're walking into your store and making a purchase. And so it's really important that you have a lot of entry points and that they're all really consistent and they're all really tied together. So, POSIM, for example, which I'm so grateful for them sponsoring my opportunity to be on the platform. But one thing why I recommend them, and I love that, is because they have the integration, right? If someone walks into your brick and mortar store and buys, a fat quarter piece of fabric, and then 5 seconds later, someone's on your website and they're looking at that same fat quarter, because they talk to each other and everything is super integrated, there's no chance that you're going to have a situation where the person in front of you in the store buys something out and also the person on the website buys it, and then you've got an inventory problem, right? So I think that it's really important with omni-channel marketing and omni-channel selling that you make sure not only is your brand and your standards and all of that really consistent across your channels, but you need to make sure that all of your policies, all of your pricing, all of your inventory, everything is all also really consistent across all the different omni-channel entry points, if you will. So, Michaela, does that answer your question about the omni-channel presence?
Yes, it definitely does. And it looks like Michelle has another question. She says, what are ways to do a marketing piece so you know where the customer came from?
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. And there's a lot of tools that you can use. So the Facebook Pixel is probably one of the most popular. And you can just Google Facebook pixels and how they work if you want to do a deep dive into that. But essentially, it's a little piece of code. It's called a pixel that you put on your Facebook posts that then links directly over to your e-commerce catalog, for example. And so when you sell something, it immediately ties those two things together. You know, without a doubt that this person sold, or I'm sorry, this person bought something because of that Facebook post. You know, there's some other really direct ways too. Comment sold is one that we use a lot. It's a third-party app that you can install, like on Instagram, for example, where if somebody sees a product and they comment in the comments, it automatically transacts a sale. So you know, really without a doubt, someone saw that photo, they clicked comment sold, or they type in sold, and you know for sure that that is a sale that came from that particular social media post. Another way that is a little more manual and / old school would be for you to do landing pages. It's part of like an automation, you know, sequence. And the way that a landing page works is, let's say you go out there with a blog post about a new quilt kit, for example. You're talking all about the skills that you need to be able to assemble this particular quilt kit. And then at the bottom you say, well, if you want to get your hands on this quilt kit, you know, for a limited time, we've got it at this sale and blah, blah, blah. Here's the link. And then that link goes to what's called a landing page. And that is just a particular piece of content that you've created just for that promotion. And on that landing page is the details of the product, how to buy it, you know, that kind of thing. And then that transacts with your catalog. So you're actually selling from the landing page. So again, you know, the only way that someone arrived at the landing page was to read the blog, because it's the only place you put that link. That's another way to tie those together. And some of our clients will do multiple landing pages for multiple promos. It's also, a landing page is a great way to see how much traffic came in to those particular, you know, pieces of engagement. So I highly recommend those. Other people have shopping carts that are integrated with coupon codes or purchase codes, promo codes. Like if you want to offer free shipping, you got to enter a certain promo code. And again, you know that you only put that promo code in a certain place. That's another way to do some tracking there. Yeah, and depending on really your e-commerce platform, what you've got going in the back end, you can track some of that. And I don't know, Michaela, maybe you can speak to it a little bit here with POSIM. I don't know if, you know, POSIM has any back end tools that sort of integrate with tracking, but I do highly recommend that people look into that for the e-commerce that they're working with.
Yeah, and then Michelle wanted just a quick follow-up. She said they're actually doing print material, which is what that's needed for. Do you have anything you can touch on as far as connecting your print material for marketing to your online material?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I'll just preface this by saying I worked in magazine advertising for many years, probably 6 or 7 years before I started Stitchcraft Marketing. And I would get this question all the time from clients. Well, how do I know that the print ad even works? And really, the only way that I could sell that concept is to encourage that client to do a really specific call to action type of ad. So let me just back up and say, I feel like there's branding ads, and then there's call to action ads. The branding ad is, you know, here's our brand, this is what we stand for, and here's our logo and sort of our general mission statement, versus a call to action ad, which is, you know, I've got this brand new kit that's $29.99 and it's available for 3 months, you know, and I want you to click here and buy that ad, or buy that kit, sorry. So if you're doing a print ad that does have a call to action and you're selling something specific, use a little code, you know, use code spring break, you know, or come up with some sort of catchy phrase. I'm sure as a consumer, you've seen this all over the place when making the purchase, and save 10% or get free shipping. You know, you are probably going to have to offer some sort of an incentive to use the code. But again, if you're only using that promo code with that print ad, then you know definitively that that's where that business came from. That was always the strategy that we employed. Hopefully
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, sure.
All right, guys, so we're kind of wrapping up here. I'm just going to pull up on the screen our contact information here. If you guys have any further questions as it relates to anything POSIM related or not, this is all of our contact information here. If you're someone who doesn't currently use the POSIM system, feel free to reach out to Matt Maciel. He is on our sales team and he can answer any questions that you guys have. Leanne's information is also up there on the screen in case you guys have any further follow-up questions for her. And then if you're an existing client who has POSIM who wants some more information, my name, Michaela Hines, I'm one of the client success managers here. If you're a current user, I'm sure that you guys know who I am. And then Wolfgang is my coworker who's also in charge of existing accounts. So if you guys have any further questions, I'm just going to leave it open for just a couple of minutes here. Like I said, you guys can use that side panel if you have any follow-up questions. I'll leave it open here for just a couple of minutes. And then if I don't get any questions here, we'll go ahead and log off. And if you guys have any further follow-up questions, like I said, all of this contact information is here. I'll leave it up on the screen here for a couple minutes that you guys can take a screenshot or picture, write down any of the contact information that you need, whether it's for me or for Leanne. And Leanne, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to answer all of these questions for everybody. We appreciate the vast knowledge that you had to share with us, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Sure, thanks. It's my pleasure, Michaela. It's been a great opportunity to partner with you guys and to be able to, share POSIM with our clients. I think it's an awesome solution, and we've enjoyed the relationship. And I would say if there's anybody still in the webinar, again, if you have specific questions about something I talked about, or just general questions about marketing for your business, you've got my email there, leanne@stitchcraftmarketing.com, and happy to help and give feedback if we can. So thanks again, Michaela, for the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like we did get one question here. Tanya wants to know if Google Analytics is the best tool to track statistics or if there's other methods that you'd prefer.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. I think that Google Analytics is really the king. I love that Google really supports that platform with a lot of education and tutorials, and it's not like a set it and forget it where they're going to forget about you, and they're constantly sending you updates and emails about like Google University and just lots of ways to interpret their tool. So I love the support that they provide, and I think that the analytics that they produce are really effective. So yes, the short answer is yes, Google. And second to that, I would say there definitely are some third-party e-commerce platforms out there. Shopify comes to mind, that has its own integrated back end, and because of that, they're controlling both sides of it. They do have a really nice integration, and there's so many different e-commerce platforms out there that the answer is sort of the same for all of them. That you got to just go in there and take a look at what the analytics are. Also keep in mind that a lot of social channels have their own analytics platforms. You can go into Facebook and Pinterest. I actually, let me just put a footnote on that. I just got an email last week that Facebook is changing its Insights, which is their name for their backend dashboard. I believe that they're moving it to a new business platform panel. It's a little bit vague as to whether they're going to start charging for that. But up until last week, Facebook Insights were also a great way to see who's coming to your page, who's using your page, how old they are, what their gender is, what country they're from. All of that was some really awesome insights and data. So take a look at the social channels that you're posting on and see if you can glean some good information from those as well. The way that we do it is we just kind of piece them all together. We take a whole little snapshot of all the social channels and the analytics that come in. And then we also do, a Google benchmarking. We call it Google benchmarking, where we're reporting that to our clients on a quarterly basis, and then they all integrating. And that's how we make our recommendations to clients about how to adjust their strategy or to, take it to the next level. So hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leanne. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have, at least in here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this down. I'll leave all this information up here on the screen just for a couple more minutes in case anybody still needs to write that down. But if you guys have any further questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out to Leanne or myself or any of the other members of our team. And we are happy to discuss either the POSIM system with you or just discuss anything further about the quilt and needlemark industry and marketing and all of those kinds of things. So thank you guys all for attending. Thank you for coming again. Thank you, Leanne, for taking the time out of your day to speak with all of us. I hope all you guys have a great week and definitely stay safe.
Thanks, Michaela.